Welcome back to another episode of the RePHIL Studio. This is your host, SB Philosopher. Get your cans ready. As always, we will refill to 99 as we always do, and we'll be ready for the next set here. Now, of course, before we welcome our special guest over to the other side of the studio, I do want to make a quick discussion about what was going on in the current events in ENdori as well as JPdori, as of course we have this really exciting 60th anniversary update coming on. Now, before I begin, I just want to apologize. This was actually recorded live earlier, but it was actually, the recording was corrupted. So for those who participated in this recording the first time, apologies for that. But regardless, we're going to do this again and discuss more about the ENdori and JPdori, what's going on. So first of all, when it comes to ENdori, we all know that there's an update that recently came out, and it was a really, really big update. One of the main features of this update was this new stage challenge live, where you basically are tasked to try and reach a certain score on a certain song. There's 25 songs in total, up to 3 stars that you can obtain in terms of how well your score is. And this gives you an opportunity to get some freebie points, like and freebie prizes, like 10 stars, some cans and such. So it's a really fun mode, especially for those who have the cards to really get the scores that are needed. My first kind of impression of it is that it's pretty fun, a little bit repetitive here and there, but free prizes, why not do that? Obviously, it is more tailored towards those who are a little bit more focused on gatching and trying to get the best cards possible for each band. So that's going to be obviously something. Now, I also find it pretty funny how right now there's some scores that are actually impossible to get as of this moment. I believe one of them was in the Roselia stage, where Rebirth Day, the final stage of the challenge, you needed 2 million points or something. And I think right now, given the restrictions of what we have, of the amount of cards we have and the area items we have in ENdori, I don't think that's even possible to get. So that's a little bit funny to get. So getting a full 75 out of 75, I don't think is possible in other stages, but let me know if I'm wrong. Regardless, it's a pretty fun stage, and of course, once you get to 70 stars, 70 of the possible 75 stars, then you will get a sort of special banner that you could put onto your profile, which is a lot of fun. Now, the profile itself is in Japanese. It's not translated properly. That's obviously an issue, but that's one of the many issues that came with this update, which we'll explain in a little bit. But either way, the stage challenge is definitely a big highlight. I think it's pretty fun. I'm around 68 stars right now on Roselia. I'm pretty sure I could get to 70 relatively easily, but I'll have to play a little bit better. So let me know how y'all are doing in these stage challenges. Is there any particular band that you have that 70 out of 75 possible stars banner? And definitely share in the comments below if you are indeed one of those people who are able to get that achievement. So that is basically the biggest highlight that came out of this update. Now, one issue about ENdori, and it continues to be an issue, it always feels like you're adding one step up when it comes to content and new things, but it also comes back with 3 steps down or even 4 steps down. In this particular case, as I mentioned before, some assets are not properly translated, including some of the sort of the banners on your profile, as well as some stickers are not translated properly. So there's a lot of work to be done. A small advantage, and I think also one big step up, is that users of Android 12 and Android 13 are no longer having some issues with the game anymore. It's a bit surprising because, obviously we've been living with Android users having issues with the game for the longest time, but it seems like it has been stabilized. There might be still some people having issues with the game, but I think it's stabilized to the point where the majority of Android 12 and 13 users who had troubles in the past are actually being able to play the game relatively consistently now. So if you are an Android user, let me know if that is indeed the case, because that's definitely something that I don't wish on anyone. I'm lucky to have an iPhone, and I just so happen to have that and be able to play the game just fine. But yeah, for the Android users, I'm sure this has been a year of a lot of stress, and finally it's resolved to a certain extent. Now, when it comes to the disadvantages, there's a lot of things that are going wrong with this update. Now, some of the minor things that are coming up is that the maintenance went a little bit longer than expected, so we're waiting for compensation on that. There was some compensation on trying to fix various issues about the updates, like again the translations is still a work in progress. But the main issue is just about these updates that have been added, right? So, for instance, Backstage Pass 5 was supposed to come with sort of star stickers. And this was supposed to be used for, like, the new gacha system and the new pity system that was supposed to be used for Bandori moving forward. I mentioned this in a video last year when it was implemented in JPdori. Now, it hasn't been implemented into the game since, and we're still waiting on compensation for the fact that it hasn't been added into the game. So that's in Backstage Pass 5. So that's something we're waiting on. And I'm actually using a post from the official Bang Dream Discord server, one of the mods, Yvette or Steve. He posted sort of like a summary of what we're being compensated for. And there's still some pending compensations for some errors and some issues with the game. And the issues just continue to pile up. It's actually kind of crazy how many issues there are with regards to the game. The main issue that is really, really concerning is the girls' memory gacha. There were some pretty big errors with it. First of all, some Michelle stickers are being created instead of the gacha stickers. So when you have a gacha sticker, instead it creates Michelle stickers, which is a big blow because obviously gacha stickers are supposed to use that for the pity system. Now, if they get turned into Michelle stickers, they're pretty much useless. There's no pity. So that is a really, really big blow there. The other thing that it had was that some characters were actually not even appearing in the gacha. So you might be throwing all these stars, but you may not even be getting the character that you want, which is absolutely insane. I didn't think this was actually going to be a thing that happened in the game, but here we are. We're in a game where, like, these kind of really, really obvious and bad issues, like pretty outstanding issues are happening into the game. So, the character issue, from what I've heard, has been resolved, but this sort of Michelle sticker conversion thing is still a work in progress from what I've heard. So we're still waiting for compensation on that, and where some star stickers gacha stickers are still being converted to Michelle stickers up to this point. So that is a pretty major oversight from the developers. And, again, when it comes to these developers, it always feels like they're really focused on trying to make one thing work, and then once one thing works, another thing completely falls apart. So, it's just the life of playing in ENdori. So again, with the graphic and the post I shared earlier, we are expected a lot of compensation. I don't know how much compensation we'll get within the next couple of weeks or months or so. The main focus will definitely be during the girls' memories gacha, because a bit of false advertising, the stickers being taken away, that could lead to actual legal lawsuits. So that will probably be resolved sooner and give compensation sooner rather than later. The other issues, I don't know when we'll get compensation for that, but regardless, again, it's unfortunate to see ENdori go all the way down here, but that's just how it is. So I am a little bit worried about how they're going to proceed with the game, especially given the fact that because of the speed up that's happening, we're actually expecting this 60th anniversary things to be happening later this year, like near the end of the year, which is kind of mind-boggling to think. So we'll see if the game is able to survive by then, if the developers are able to keep up with that, because that is a pretty tall task in order. Now, talking about the JP anniversary updates, I've made a video actually summarizing all the updates that are going to be happening into the 6th-year anniversary. So for whatever reason you haven't checked it out, I'll have a card above in this video just to check things out and have a look for yourself and have a listen. But there's a lot of great updates that are happening to the game. So I shared a poll on the YouTube channel on what my subscribers and just viewers and passerbys think about the upcoming 60th anniversary updates and whether or not they're excited or overwhelmed. Now, I'm actually kind of surprised that it was actually close to 50-50 in terms of the results. I know a lot of people are very excited with the upcoming updates when it comes to things like 3D Live, when it comes to like the 3D costumes, right? And a little bit of new unique cards, new songs, a lot of new content, and of course, the third year's graduating and having content for that. That's obviously one of what I would think I'm most excited about personally as well. But a lot of people are overwhelmed, and I could kind of see why, right? Because there's a lot of content to the point where it's a little bit of content overload with how much things are being added, to the point where it actually kind of feels like a different game, right? There's going to be things like Battle Pass, right? There's going to be things like the new 5-star cards, which means more gacha, and then duplicates and all that. So I want to just break it down into what I feel personally on what this update will bring to fans, and what my own thoughts are. Before I do do that, I just want to also share that this was a studio question that I asked in my Discord server. So here are some of my responses from my Discord server members. And again, a lot of them are very mixed as well. Some people are really excited about the new updates while being overwhelmed in other parts of the update. And I just want to summarize the thoughts of what my server members and myself and what we all think about this. Because overall, the update, again, a lot of great content. I think the main thing I'm most excited for is the third years being able to graduate, having some character development there. I think that's the most exciting part. There are also some small things, again, the costumes, the 3D mode. For casual players, I think this is a really big bonus. Now, by casual players, I think people who are big fans of the series but casual players of the game, I think that really targets them and it does a really good job there. My issue about the update being added is that, again, there's a lot of content being added all at once. So for those who are a casual fan of not only the series, but also the game at the same time, if suddenly during the 6th-year anniversary, they get a huge content overload and they're already kind of behind on a lot of things, like maybe they're behind on the lore or behind on the things they have to complete in order to get stars or whatnot, right? With so much new content suddenly coming and pouring in all at once, that content overload can actually deter people from playing the game further because they have so much things to catch up to, and it doesn't really make sense for them to continue playing. That was my personal sentiment with D4DJ, another one of Bushiroad's games, and they just put so much collabs and so much new content all at once to the point where I couldn't keep up with the lore and I couldn't keep up with what I needed to do in order to, catch up. And then to the point where if there's so much things to catch up, I just stopped really playing the game. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way for other games, but I feel like for Bushiroad and going with Bandori, I feel like there's a little bit of a trap going on there. And I feel that could be something that could deter people from the game. Especially given the fact that during this 6th-year anniversary preparation, this whole past year, there really hasn't been a lot of content for JPdori. They reduce the amount of card art that being created, right? Just so that they have more resources for the 6th-year anniversary. And I think during that period of time, and I'll be honest, guys, a lot of people have migrated from JPdori to JP Sekai. Project Sekai is a huge competitor for Bandori, and it's trying to keep up and doing its own thing. And Bandori is really, in a sense, kind of trying to take what's good about Project Sekai and just kind of do it themselves and try to copy and see what it goes. Things like the Battle Pass, right? Where you have to spend in order to get very unique prizes. Things like the merges, right? The duplicates, adding more power to your characters, and just general like 5-star characters and all that, and 5-star gachas. That's going to be a huge extra investment for tiering. So tiering in Project Sekai was already really notorious for being incredibly expensive, and I'm fearing that Bandori is starting to feel the same, right? They're going to really move in that direction where it's going to be really expensive to tier and really show your devotion for your favorite characters or band. I'm really hesitant on that because as someone who's only a very casual spender of the game, this really doesn't really target me, and I feel that I'm sort of being pressured to pay extra money to get features, and I don't think that's necessarily what people want, right? So there's a lot of concerns I have with the direction of JPdori personally. Obviously, the new content's going to be really exciting, and I think there's a lot of new things that are really cool. But, from the small things like the UI differences, right, to the somewhat bigger things, right, like the card upgrades and just the more focus on being a bigger spender to get more benefits, right? I think this may backfire. There's a possibility that it may backfire. I think in the beginning there will be a lot of hype, but I don't know how long-term, how sustainable will that be, especially because tiering, again, it's just a big investment, a big sacrifice. And again, if you're trying to grab the Sekai tiers or something, right, and bring them to Bandori, because it's such a big investment, you're not going to be tiering Sekai and Bandori at the same time at this point, right? It just doesn't make sense. That's a huge financial investment. So you're stuck with choosing one or the other. I don't know if that necessarily makes someone go from Sekai to Bandori, right? So I don't know, a lot of mixed thoughts about this, and food for thought for you guys to think about as well. So, what do you think about this update overall? I think, again, for a casual perspective, it's great. I think for a casual fan of the series, this update is great. There's a lot of amazing updates to come, but I think for those who are a little bit more serious into the game, might start to feel that there's a little bit of external pressure that is not necessarily in the benefit of the players. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you excited or perhaps overwhelmed with this particular update? Because I personally, again, very excited, but also there are some concerns that I feel that, again, I'm not sure whether or not there's going to be some major implications for Bandori in the future. Again, I'm also worried about these projects, right? The big summer project that they mentioned in the summer and the winter. And then, of course, there's going to be another like half anniversary major update in the fall. Could be a lot of content in a short period of time. So we'll see again if they're able to keep up with that content and be able to deliver in a high quality rather over quantity, and still be able to cater towards the casual fan base. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know in the comments below. So yeah, that will be it for this part of the episode. So we will hop over to the other side of the studio where our special guest is waiting. And yeah, I think that's all I want to share and discuss for now. So let's hop over. Let's see what our special guest has to say. Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. As a reminder, the RePHIL Studio podcast is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And when you're there, make sure you leave a high rating and also leave a comment, because all support with regards to bringing more exposure to the RePHIL Studio podcast is greatly appreciated. Speaking of support, big shout out and thank you to the Filler Nation members who've been constantly supporting me in making my content. So you'll be featured in videos like these. And again, I want to say a big thank you to you all for supporting me on my content. So if you want to be a part of the Filler Nation and you want to support me in my content, feel free to join by subscribing to my Twitch channel. Links in the description below. And in the description, you also see the link to my Ung Academy Discord server, where you can join fellow members who are passionate about Bang Dream and also be able to interact with special guests featured on this podcast. You'll also be able to participate in the studio question that appears on every episode. So we look forward to seeing you there. So let's hop right back into the episode. And welcoming our latest special guest for the RePHIL Studio podcast, I have the pleasure and honor to welcome Rachael, aka Aurora Subs, over to the studio today. So Rachael, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and talk a little bit more about your experiences.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So for those who maybe are not too familiar with you, or in terms of like what you do, to add to the intro that I gave you, is there anything else you want to add to those who may not necessarily know you?
Well, I'm a fan subber and a fan translator. I primarily do content outside of the games, so fan subs of the real life concerts or of interviews or song lyrics. But within the last couple of months, I've also shifted to doing event translations for specific ones that grab my interest. I run the Rosenland website, so it's kind of a collection of all the things I do, a resource, hopefully, for fans of Roselia and for Bandori. And yeah, I just really love the franchise.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Obviously people who are big fans of the franchise, that's why they're invited here to this podcast to talk more and share their love for Bang Dream and such. So let's take some time to hear a little bit about your origin story. Like, how did you first get into Bandori as a franchise? So Rachael, care to share a little bit about how you first heard about Bang Dream and how did you get into it?
Of course. So I'm one of those people who actually came in through Review Starlight. I know a lot of people have the exact opposite experience of doing Bandori into Review. But as a kid, I had always been a fan of Sailor Moon. And so from that, I experienced the Sailor Moon musicals, which gave me kind of some insight into stage and into stage adaptations of media. And I was also a big fan of Utena, the anime. And the combination of those things led me to Review. and I watched review, and Claudine was like an immediate favorite character. Watched the stage stuff. You can already tell where this is going. While I was watching it, I was kind of just really surprised that Claudine didn't really get to sing a lot because I thought she had a really good voice. And so one day I like Googled like Aiba Aina and like went to her Wikipedia page. And I think in like the first line it says she's the vocalist of Roselia from Bandori. And I had heard probably one or two Roselia songs before this. I actually had like coincidentally put Oneness on one of my study playlists, just like Japanese music that I listen to when I study. And so I already knew I liked the music from the game, and I knew that both Ai and Ayase-chan were in it because I had looked it up. And that kind of motivated me to pick up the game. And that would have been, late 2019, I think, December 2019, around the time that rash craziness was happening in real life.
Yeah. That's a pretty quite interesting way of getting into the series. It's for me also as a big Seiyu fan, it's definitely not unheard of for you being someone being really passionate about a particular Seiyu, getting into other franchises because of a particular Seiyu, and in your case is Aiba Aina, which is of course also one of my favorite Seiyus as well. So really cool to hear, Rachael. Now, when you got into the game, like, was Roselia an immediate like, okay, this is my favorite band? Like, I know for certain that this is my favorite band, or was there any other bands or characters that particularly caught your interest?
That's a great question. So at this time, I'm sure people who know the little timeline probably know Ras and Morphonica were not in the game yet, so they're not really options. I gravitated towards Roselia because of Ai, and I expected Yugina to be my favorite character. She was very quickly taken over by Lisa as my favorite. But the other band that grabbed my attention really early on was Poppypa. I think they're just such a delightful little group. I watched the anime not too long after picking up the game, and they're just so good in season 1 that I couldn't help but love them. So they're definitely a second favorite. But I think Roselia was number 1 from the start.
And Lisa in particular is like one of
Lisa in particular. She's such a good character.
Very true, very true. I love Lisa. She's great. She's definitely great.
They're all good individual characters, but Lisa's just something, I don't know, she's something so special. I love her in mixed events. I love her in full Roselia events.
Definitely.
Just very good.
Definitely. We'll definitely talk about, your, experience being able to read some of these characters, a little bit about the developments very shortly, definitely throughout this episode. One thing I do want to also ask you in terms of your Seiyus, right? I'm sure as a fan of the franchise, you're a big fan of the Seiyus as well. Is Aiba Aina also still your favorite up to this point, or other Seiyus in particular are also someone that you enjoy following?
I really like all of the Seiyu, especially for the live band, just because I think we get more from them. My favorites are definitely like the Roselia crew. I think I've just experienced so much more of them. My current favorite, if I had to pick, is probably Kudoharu. I think she's a delight. I love all of the work she does outside of Bandori, but within Bandori, I think her voice as Sayo is really special. I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying it's probably my favorite voice acting work in the whole game. The life she brings to Sayo is just incredible. Another favorite of mine, tragically, is Yurishi. Really, really enjoyed her presence on stage as Lisa. Really great work.
Kudoharu, and Yurishi, that's like all like, kind of where my list also kind of leans towards as well, for sure. It's quite interesting, Rachael, that you kind of got into, or especially you were a big fan of Yurishi when she, at that point when you first heard about Roselia and really got into Roselia, she was already at that point already retired. So
that's right.
It's quite interesting that you still kind of looped back and like kind of learned a little bit about her history with the band, even as someone who got into it relatively newer compared to,
Right. And I think for me, that's partly because the timing I joined was actually like really good for that. There's a Roselia Blu-ray collection of their like early lives. So like the first 5 lives and the fan meeting. And that happened to come out right around the time that I got interested in the franchise. And I knew I was in it. I knew I liked the music. And I saw it on Amazon. And it was only like $70. And I thought that was a crazy deal for the amount of content. And I wasn't really planning on getting into the live stuff. I thought it was kind of a novelty maybe at first. But I bought that disc, the Blu-ray collection. And that just has a bunch of concerts with the original 5. It has a couple with the current lineup as well, but through that I kind of got to experience the concerts in order. So starting with like the Yurishi Ake-san group, and even from that first concert from original Rosenlied, Yurishi like caught my eye immediately. She really commanded that stage, I feel.
Definitely. So it's definitely quite interesting that you got to do a lot of work and really appreciate all sort of 7 seiyus and Roselia involved in the process. So it's really cool to see. One more quick question, Rachael. Have you ever had the chance to, and again, I may be wrong, but have you had the chance to meet these seiyus live before? Is that a dream in progress that you're trying to pursue?
It would be fun, I think, to meet them. The timing when I got into the franchise was late 2019, so then COVID hit, and then no one has come. I'm in the US, no one has come here, so I don't really have a chance to meet anyone. I do think it would be very fun to meet them, although I do worry because the work I do is not something that I could ever talk to them about because it's not legal.
Well, at the end of the day, you're a fan,
like,
right?
Raji, like, hello, nice to meet you. I'm a big fan, and that would be it.
Yeah, but I mean, as long you know, when you meet these seiyus, you're not really. I don't necessarily think it would be you coming to them as a translator, but them as a fan, right? Just a pure fan of the franchise, and I'm sure, hopefully, one day, fingers crossed on Care Expo. That usually happens in California. Hopefully it happens this year. Of course, in late December, that's when it usually happens. It could be like a celebration of you getting to the franchise for 4 years, and you'll be able to see them in person. So, fingers crossed that does happen.
That and just schedule a meetup with some friends and just all hang out and like watch the anime or watch a live together, and then go to Cara Expo and just hang out. I think that would be such a good time. Yeah. Unfortunately, I will have exams in January next year, so a December trip is probably unlikely.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Who knows? They may even visit your area for whatever reason. They may visit. We'll see. Special private location to America. All right. So, Rachael, again, that's great to hear about your origins, of getting into the franchise and getting into learn more about what in particular the franchise you like. Now, of course, you joining the, I guess, learning more about the franchise, you eventually did join the community. In particular, what you do and what you do best in the community is give out, translations for events like the events that you've seen, from the live performances, and then eventually later to the event translation. So can you tell me a little bit more about what first got you into thinking about doing translations for these kind of particular, I guess, scenarios and live shows?
Great question. So I'm sure a lot of people already know. Some people might not. My first project that I released isn't directly related to Bandori. My first project that I released as a fan subber was Yurishi's final concert, Emotional Daybreak. I had a little bit of experience with Aegisub, which is a program that I used to produce subs. Before this, I had used it once in a class in college for completely unrelated reasons, and then had joined a group looking to sub the Bloom Into You stage plays. That project never really did get released. Other groups got it out before, and we just got so busy that that's still just in limbo. So I had that experience using the kind of basic software. And after a whole year of COVID, I was just so tired. I don't know why, but I decided to rewatch Emotional Daybreak, which I had watched earlier when I had first gotten into the Seiyu side of things. And it's just something about, I think, being at home and having all this chaos in the world and going to see this concert, like, really meant a lot to me for some reason. So I opened up Aegisub and I said, I'm going to try to translate some of what she's saying in her MC speaking parts, which was definitely a challenge because the way people speak in concerts and in just real life is so different from what you learn as like a student of the language. And so that was a huge hurdle to jump over to try to understand everything she was saying. And then as I did more of that, I thought, well, the lyrics of these songs are so tied into the meaning of this concert, especially the ones that she wrote herself. So I decided to translate the lyrics to all 22 songs in that concert. It's a huge concert. So I did that. I shared some of my work in the Lisa Discord, and people really seemed to appreciate it. And so I decided I'm going to finish this concert as best as I can. I'm going to release it on the anniversary of the concert, which is June 1st. It might be the only thing I ever sub, but it's worth sharing. It's a really good concert. And so that motivation of kind of trying to push out this one thing got me more into learning Japanese and more into translating, and also just more into learning about Yurishi and the other Roselia Seiyu, because that was such a big part of her career around that time. That really is what pushed me into wanting to do further projects. I really enjoyed the process. And roughly around that time, Zeal of Proud came out, and that had Roush as the bundled concert. And that's one of my favorite concerts in the whole franchise. So I kind of jumped from Emotional Daybreak to saying, well, let's sub this concert for Roselia. Let's sub Roush. And then it just sort of kept going and kept going. I haven't really stopped since.
Well, that's one way to continue to stay motivated and continue to make sure you do projects, because ultimately, because it's something you enjoy and you love, it's really great to see that continue to inspire you to do more, especially because, as you mentioned earlier, this was, Japanese is, by the sounds of it, it was something you learned as a student. And, obviously translating is very different from understanding. So, for you, what was, I think, maybe the most difficult part about first getting into translating, especially, when Japanese may not necessarily be, something you were able to master like right off the bat?
I actually didn't learn Japanese in school. I am 100% self-taught. That really surprises a lot of people when they hear that. I had been learning kind of passively for a little while. I learned hiragana and katakana when I was in college just by myself. And then kind of kept learning a little bit of grammar here or there, but never really hardcore. When I entered medical school, though, I didn't want to just study medicine. And so I started doing a little bit more hardcore studying for Japanese. And so that got me more into that. But, oh God, for translating and for subbing especially, a huge thing you have to worry about is just flow of the translation you're producing. You can't just do a one-to-one, this word equals that word, this grammar equals that grammar. If you do that, you end up with something that just does not sound good in English. And that was really, really difficult with someone speaking live. It's not a text on the screen that you can just look at and then figure out from there. It's like, oh, Yurishi is talking and this line lasts 20 seconds because she is rambling. And I have to figure out how to present that in English. And I think that's actually the hardest part, is that the way people speak in real life does not correlate to what you learn either in class or in a textbook or in Duolingo or whatnot. It's often very rambly and uses slang words, or people mumble. And that kind of, I guess, practical difficulty is where I really was challenged and continue to be challenged. I don't think I've mastered that at all.
But regardless, I mean, that just shows how much commitment you have towards these projects, and the fact that, man, you are studying like medicine, studying like Japanese language all at the same time. You're definitely one smart cookie, Rachael, for all that, for doing all those projects all at once. So that's honestly quite fascinating and great to see.
Yeah, to me, subbing is fun. It's a break from real life. I get a lot of messages from people who are a little worried about like burnout and subbing, because the projects are such a labor of love. Subbing is different from translating, because translating is only one of like 5 steps of subbing. And so people do worry about that, but for me it's such a hobby, such a fun time, that I can get home from a hard day at school and I can sit down and be like, I'm gonna sub like 50 lines today, and it really doesn't feel like it's work.
Okay. Well, you mentioned something quite interesting, Rachael, just there. It's like, translating is just sort of one step towards subbing. So, maybe on a day-to-day, like if, let's say, you were working on a project, like subbing on a particular live or particular project, like what goes into that process? Like if let's say you had a day to like do a little bit of work for subbing, what would that day typically look like for those who maybe are not too familiar with, what would a translate or subber would do on a day-to-day basis?
Okay. everyone has their own sort of workflow. I use a program called Agisub, which is pretty standard in fan subgroups. Other people will use other software. It's basically the same concept, though. Usually it starts with timing out the concert or the speech or whatever you're working on. And so that just means hit play, listen to the dialogue, and then you have to split off the lines wherever people stop talking and start talking. And I've gotten pretty good at this. So usually this process usually takes me about a time and a half of whatever the thing I'm subbing is. So if I'm subbing a 2-hour-long concert, it'll probably take me about 3 hours to get through this process as like a rough guideline. And I usually just do it all in one sitting. It takes a lot of focus because you can't really listen to music or anything else at the same time because you have to actually hear what's being said. But it's not too bad. I feel like a lot of people view timing as an obstacle for subbing, but once you, I think, do it the first time, it becomes very second nature. After I time, usually I begin translating. So I start from the beginning and try to work through. Because I do concerts, there's MC segments and then they're punctuated by songs. And so I split it up and I try to do the MC sections all at once, just so that the flow of the conversation stays. I feel like if I do half of an MC and then stop and then start again, I've like lost the flow of the translation. So I do that. Usually I start with like a more base translation of like, here's a 1-to-1 of what's being said, or here's how I would word this if I was saying it. And then later on, I go back and I consider, this line is being said by Yukina, so I have to reword it to sound like her, kind of like an editing process. And then for MCs and for lyrics, at that point, I would add in all the text effects, which is actually very easy for these. Agisub offers like a subtitle list for the styles, and so you can just like pick and choose which ones you want, and actually very easy. I do that, and then I retime everything so that it flows with the translation, matches like any cuts between cameras. A really underrated, like underappreciated part of subbing is like not having the lines be slightly too long or slightly too short. That's a big thing that you notice when you start subbing. But Roselia lives in particular always have those intermissions. I think anyone who's seen Roselia's live, like they love, like the intermissions are such a big part of it. And those often involve a lot of visual text, a lot of like notes from the staff on screen, or like they'll show like the score of the Don't Break character. And so doing that part isn't just like, oh, I'm translating the text. I also have to put the text on screen and like kind of make it match the vibe of the original so that it doesn't feel too out of place, which is not difficult, but it's a lot of really busy work. A lot of like, oh, does this look good? Maybe I'll try this instead, and whatnot. That's probably the hardest part of more recent projects that I've had, especially as I've gotten more comfortable translating the group. So then once you get that done, you have to quality check everything and make sure like, oh, all the lines are like in the right color, because I color code by speaker. Like if Meguchi's saying something, I don't want it to be like in Ai's purple color, because that would be distracting. And so you have to go through and watch the whole thing, make sure everything is in the right place, make sure nothing is like going to crash your media player, because sometimes you put too much stuff on the screen, it will crash the media player. I have learned that. And usually at this stage, I send the concert out to some friends and other people in my Discord server, so they can watch it on their own computers, and let me know if there's any issues or if they catch anything that I've missed, because I always miss things. If you see a typo in my concert, I've probably watched the concert like at least 10 times and I somehow still missed it. There's just that much happening because it's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just uncoding it, which is not very difficult. I just use a command line program. Blub, who is a subber who worked on stuff previously, on his website has a section with guidelines on how to use the program, and I actually just peek over there and steal that every time. It works really well. I do that and then I upload it, and that's really it sounds like a lot more work than it is, but also it is a lot more work than it sounds like. it's like this kind of paradoxical situation.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like you put a lot of effort. There's a lot of fine tuning things that you have to do to really make sure that the project works the way that you want. But I think at the end of the day, Rachael, it's like, when you do these subs, like I think the added benefit is just the fact that you watch the concert like over and over again. You just keep enjoying the concert over and over again. So I think in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I mainly do Roselia. I get asked all the time, like, why don't you sub? Like, insert other band here. And it's just part of it's because I know more about the characters and the Seiyu in Roselia, so it's more natural for me to catch references or to be able to like word things the way that I think like I would say something, than it would be to like suddenly jump into a Morphonic Alive and have to do the same thing for someone there. But also I end up watching and listening to the songs and like the little like jokey dialogue during the MCs so many times, and I truly feel that if I wasn't like 100% devoted, I would give up.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's a bit of a treat, to watch these concerts, as much as you can with, being a fan of the band and such. And, I think at some point, maybe you even have some parts of the concert fully memorized.
Oh, for sure. I've joked before because Emotional Daybreak was a 6-month-long project that I did in like smaller pieces. I didn't have enough experience, but there are full songs in that concert that I could probably like do the whole choreography for, like exactly how Yurishi does it in the live. If I ever get a watch party done with this, people are probably going to ask me to like do the like monochrome overdrive dance, and I'm not going to know, like I'm just going to have to do it because I won't have a choice.
Oh boy, yeah.
But you notice a lot of like really fun little interactions too when you have to watch something just over and over and over again. And that's like a little treasure for me because a lot of people who watch it, they're going to watch it once. They might be multitasking. Even if they watch it more than once, it's like, how much is really going to stick with you? You're not watching it 10 times in the span of a week like I am. So like you'll see like maybe in the background of like an eye shot, maybe you'll see like Kudoharu and Yuki like do a fist bump or like something like that. And I feel like that's such a little treat. All these little moments that we don't get to see. Just not watching normally.
And you'd be like, you could be the one to be like, I know this happened. Maybe not that many people in the world do, but I do know that happened. So that's really awesome to hear, Rachael. Just, the whole project and how it all works. It's just really cool to see how you get people are just so devoted and so, dedicated to a project. We, of course, thank you and many people in the community for all the work that you've done, because I'm sure for a lot of people, it's really great to see and just be able to understand everyone's the projects and the franchise that we love even more. Is all the work from the community is very appreciated.
Every time someone thanks me, it's just very humbling. Because when I started doing this, I thought like this is going to be a project that maybe 10 people will watch, but even if only 10 people watch it, that's absolutely worth it. And so to be able to release something that larger groups of people see, that people share with their friends even, does mean a lot to me. I'm glad that I can make the franchise more accessible to people. That's really big for me. Just wanting to share this thing that I love with other people.
Yeah. Making it accessible, make sure, everyone's word can be heard even from international, right? That's the one thing I think Bushiroad really wants to do, really wants to understand that, is there really an international demand for this franchise and, with the projects from the community, I'm sure that voice will be heard. And yes, we do need more, more content from Bushiroad and overseas. So, fingers crossed that continues to grow for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Fingers crossed. Sometimes I get interaction on my concert subs or on translations or in DMs from folks who are in Japan. Not like international folks who moved to Japan, but from like native born Japanese individuals who like Bandori. And they'll always be like, sorry for using Google Translate. They always start like that. But then they thank me for what I do to kind of spread it internationally. And I always find that so, I don't know, it warms my heart to see like people across cultures embrace the same thing and enjoy the same thing. I mean, when I released my Einheit subs, which was in 2021, there was even like a quote tweet on that release from someone who tagged Kidani, which terrified me. And the guy was like, "Look at what overseas fans are doing. Like, this is so cool." And then I blocked him immediately. I'm like, "No, you're not allowed to tag Mr. Bushiroad himself, because that will delete everything I've ever done."
Yeah, don't snitch on all the hard work.
Yeah, the guy was even being like, "This is cool." Like, it wasn't like, "Look at what these foreigners are doing. Like, they're breaking the law." It was like, "Why aren't you doing this, like, Kidani?" Like, but that's the kind of reaction. I kind of laughed when I saw it, and then immediately blocked both the tweeter and Kidani. I'm like, I can't let you see this.
Haha, blocked. That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, Rachael, again, it's a really it's awesome to hear about your previous your projects and your experience doing all the subbing. We'll definitely talk a little bit more about your future projects in just a bit and what you have in store. There's one thing I do want to briefly touch on, and you mentioned this before, right? The community in terms of translating. So you've already mentioned a few people like Blub, who's also very well known about translating a few projects here and there. So what is that community like? Because of course, here in the RePHIL Studio podcast, we do a lot of bring a lot of special guests over, specifically for those who play the game a lot. They tier a lot in the game. So obviously, Bang Dream, it's a pretty niche community to begin with. But even within this niche, there's a lot of different kinds of groups who are fans of different parts of the franchise. So can you tell me a little bit more about what is it like? What's the translating community like? How did it all kind of started for you? And just overall, any memorable, I guess, stories from your time in the community.
Sure. Well, it's more of like a loosely connected community. We don't have like a translator Discord server or anything, like nothing official like that. But we do all like DM each other a lot about projects. For me, the first interaction that I had with anyone else from the translating side was with Haru. Haru does subs on YouTube, and people might have seen her Flam and Wasser concert subs, which are on YouTube on her channel. Really great. She reached out to me not long after I put out Emotional Daybreak, because I was clearly someone who really liked Roselia, and so does she. So we talked about that a lot and have supported each other's work. I owe a lot to her kind of starting out for encouraging me to keep going. And then after that, I got more active on Discord, joined some Discord servers. And around that time, I started talking to people like Forever and Soran, both of who are incredible. I look up to them. Before I translated, I had watched work from both of them. Also from Blub, who I have not interacted with, but also look up to Blub a lot for the Roselia subs that Blub did for Edward Kite and for Veer. I think if those subs hadn't existed, I wouldn't have even given Emotional Daybreak a shot. I would have been like, doing a concert's too ambitious. But the fact that someone else had already done it, I think really encouraged me to do so. And then after that, I started my own Discord server. It's kind of just like we talk about Roselia and translating. And a couple other people on the translator side joined that, and I've gotten to know them a lot. So like Fina, I talked to a little bit before, but they joined my channel, my Discord server, and we've collaborated since. Fina did the Road to Avalon fan translation, and I came on kind of as an editor for that. Really enjoyed that process. Shiro Mocha is also in that Discord. They do wonderful event translations for Afterglow and Morphonica. Conversations with them are always just I learned so much from what they do. Even though they're not a subber, their work really does motivate me to get better. But at the end of the day, it's like we're all just kind of individuals who DM each other sometimes. We're not really like one big collective, like, oh, it's the translation community.
Yeah.
I think part of that's just the community suffered such a big setback in a couple times, actually, just when videos and when work gets copyright striked, by Bushiroad on YouTube or wherever else. And so a lot of people who maybe used to make up this community just don't do it anymore. And so that's always something in the back of our heads as subbers, is when we put out this work, are we endangering what we do? I'd love to see it grow into an even bigger community. I'd love to see more people take on event translations for other bands, like Hello Happy. Like, no one translates Hello Happy events, but they should, because they're really good.
Yeah.
Or encouraging more people to start fan subbing. I have encouraged people. I know I said that like subbing is a lot of work, but learning how to use Aegisub and taking that first step is so easy. It's a free program that anyone can get. You get that program and like you buy or obtain a concert, and you can just like get going, and you can sub like that Morphonic Alive that you think everyone should see, or that Poppy Alive that you watched a year ago and like has been on your mind ever since. I really do want to encourage people to get started and kind of get into that community.
It's quite interesting how you kind of think of it more like a little bit of like maybe like individual agents kind of lurking around in the whole mass of Bandori fans, but obviously again, all of you, regardless, each one of you make very important contributions to the community with regards to your translations and your projects. They all slowly work together and behind the scenes kind of do all this work for all of us. So it's, again, even though it may not necessarily be like a full-fledged kind of community or sort of group as a source, again, it's really cool that regardless, you all kind of know each other, have a little bit of connections, and understand like who everyone is, and that definitely would be happy to sort of work together and work on those projects.
Yeah, such. I'm always up for doing collaborations with people. Like Fina and I are working on the Roselia concert back behind the scenes. That's still happening. I'd love to work with other people on other projects. People are always welcome to reach out to me. I am really busy in real life, but if you ever want to, if you like know how to translate or know how to sub, or even if you're just thinking about getting started, you can always DM me and I can help share some resources or get you in contact with maybe someone who does the kind of work that you're interested in.
Definitely.
And then also as translators, it's kind of funny because we want to support each other, but we all know the language, and so therefore we don't have any need for each other's translations. So like if I see true. Like, oh, Fina has translated like an event, it's like I already read the event, but I'll read it again because Fina's my friend. So or like, oh, Sauron did lyrics for a song. Like I've already heard the song, but I'm gonna read the translation anyways because like, Sauron's cool.
Yeah, it is definitely quite different from tiering, where if you could definitely directly help someone in that. And right. Translation is just like a little bit of like cheerleading on the side, but really ultimately, most of you all have your own individual project, individual skill sets to work on the project. So it's definitely quite different, but still fun regardless. Again, I'm sure that, again, as you just mentioned, right, all the support, all the encouragement and kind of inspiration you got from people who did projects in the past really inspired you. And maybe in the future, we'll have people who will be inspired by your work to also do, subs and such for the franchise in the future. So hopefully that will be something that will happen.
Yeah, that would be great. Seeing more people pick it up and spread it and make it more accessible to an international fan base.
Yeah, definitely. And, that kind of leads to the fact that, the franchise itself is growing very big. There's definitely some major changes that will be happening and major updates to the franchise as we're approaching a couple months from now.
Definitely. There's so much news that's happened in the last month.
Oh boy, yeah. That live stream was definitely was something. There was a lot of things that got added there. So just before I go into that, Rachael, do you play the game like itself, or is that something you actually do, or are you just mostly focused on just the franchise related things?
I do play the game. When I first started out, I started playing the game on the English server in late 2019. Played only on English for a few months, and then I think it was the third election results came out, and it was Roselia who won, and they got this costume set that I really liked on Japan. So that encouraged me to download the Japanese server and play on that. So I kind of go back and forth between the two servers. I don't really have like a main server that I play on. I don't tier. I'm the kind of person who like goes for the event cards, and then like if I don't get any more than that, like it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. So just a casual player, right? Just play the events, hear the story, learn a little bit more about the characters, and gacha here and there, and just more of a casual fan.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am with other games that I play too. So this is just how I enjoy like little phone games.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine. Like once you kind of go into that like once you kind of cross that border of like instead of like playing it for fun, you actually like try and go like competitive. It's so hard to go back. So I think it's I'm glad that you're sort of a casual fan, still enjoying it in a casual way, and still regardless being able to really enjoy the franchise, because again, even casual fans, like I think as a maybe like a more competitive player, you don't really get to appreciate the franchise as much when you're so focused on trying to get the high ranks, and you kind of you don't really stop and think back about, oh, what is it that really got me into the franchise in the first place? It was the story and the characters and the lore behind it. So
yeah, I mean, the first time I think I even like encountered the Tyrion community was with Roselia Bandori 3 when that hit EN. Because that was a big thing. A lot of people on my server wanted to tier that. If anyone listening run into a clown during that event, that was my server.
Oh,
shout out to clowns, by the way.
Let's go. Yeah, that was cool.
Fun. And so I kind of like learned a little bit about like the stuff that you guys do and like how to optimize your play and like the hours that you guys do sometimes. I think it's like, for me, that's insane. I could never play something for that long, but I'm sure people look at the work I do and they're like, you watch a concert 10 times just to like translate one song. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. So. Yeah, every different perspectives for sure. So it's
definitely. And then when all the news came out for 6th anniversary, I feel like you've heard so many different perspectives from people who like either are really into the gacha or are really into tiering, or like me, who like I just like the events and I like to tap little notes sometimes. Like everyone interpreted all that information so differently. I thought that was fascinating to kind of see the reactions to like all the new changes that they're going to add. Okay, shout out to the Spreadcore top 100 lyrics train. That was so cool. Yeah. I'm so glad that y'all got that organized, and I'm very happy that I got to participate, even though I didn't tour the event.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was a really fun lyric train. It almost didn't happen, but I think there was definitely some people who kind of pushed for it and really made sure that is it. And I'm also glad to be a part of it as well. I think I was like ranked 56 or something, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'm the one who would have assigned you a lyric. So whatever you got, I'm sorry if it was just like the whoa part. That was on
me. But it all worked out. It all worked out in the end. So we all.
Oh yeah, the end product looks amazing. Yeah, I'm really proud that I got to join. Very humbled that I was invited to take part.
Yeah, me and you both. We're both a part of a unique project. A similar project together. So yeah, definitely a lot of fun to see that result. So good. So Rachel, now moving towards going into the franchise right now. Of course, the 60th anniversary is coming. There's a lot of big changes coming, and I asked many of our server members as well about what they think about the upcoming 60th anniversary, what they're most excited about, or perhaps maybe a little bit worried or overwhelmed by. What about you though? Like, is there anything about like this, the franchise that you see that like you're really excited about, or anything you're a bit worried about as we approach March?
In game, I'm really excited about the progress of time finally resuming. We had stagnated for such a long time, and I think part of that's just we added Morphonica and Rash so close together, and then had to establish those groups, and so like we couldn't really progress the story outside of those bands quite too much. But now finally, like 3 years later, everyone's ready to have that development again and go to college and go up a grade, and for me that's really exciting, especially with the quality of the stories that we've gotten. In this last year, especially the ones that are directly tied to graduation. It makes me really look forward to what's going to happen, how the writing will continue to develop as changes happen in the status quo. Because ever since I started playing, it's been pretty much the same. They've added these new bands, but other than Roselia going pro, nothing's really changed.
Yeah.
That really excites me.
Yeah, finally after 6 years, right? They finally you're so actually gonna age up.
I'm so happy they're aging up. Like I said, the stories that they've been doing for that are amazing. I think it's probably like as a whole collective the strongest writing we've gotten, probably ever. Although I think there are like individual stories here and there that do stand out from the past as being really strong, like Umbrella for Autumn Rain, or like the Pastel Palettes band stories are all really good. Graduation has kind of been at that level or above, which makes me really, really happy. But beyond that, also, there's so many changes happening mechanically in the game. And I know people have a lot of feelings about them. My feelings are mostly positive, mostly. I think 5-star cards and live costumes and stuff, that's all kind of cool to me. I will
Yeah.
probably never use live mode. My phone will probably explode. But I know a lot of people who play other games like Project Sekai and Ensemble Stars really do appreciate those games for having this other mode. And I think that Bandori kind of updating itself to what are like the so-called current gen standards that those games are at, and a willingness to adapt to the times is really big, because it could have stayed the same and had that kind of like past gen vibe to it that it does now, which isn't bad. I love the vibe that it has currently. That's what I fell in love with. But kind of trying to make it more accessible to new fans without completely alienating the old ones must be like a huge challenge for the development team.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Seeing all these like mastery or like the extra cards or like changing up how the multi-live rooms work. All these little changes that maybe if it was like, oh, this one change is happening in isolation, wouldn't feel like a big deal, but you have like 20 changes happening all at once, so it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we're gonna have to. I mean, we're all gonna have to get used to it, obviously, whether for bad or for good. For me, I think it's for good. I think it's a good chance to get more people into the game. The only thing that I'm not super into is the UI.
Yeah.
I've read through the lounge comments. And that seems to be a pretty common complaint that the new UI just does not have the charm that the current one does.
Yeah, the current one definitely has its own uniqueness, and it kind of moving away from that, the uniqueness that really made Bandori its sort of own unique feel and style. But I kind of echo your words, Rachel. A lot of the parts of the franchise, I'm really excited to see how the story progresses, how the lore updates with the girls finally aging up. That's definitely something I'm definitely going to be a lot more attentive of. As for the game, we'll see how it goes with that, and with all the updates that they add. So I'll just be cautiously optimistic about those features. So
right, I know people. I mean, this was announced like last year at 5th anniversary, so I know people have had a lot of time to think and to worry about change, and I think change is kind of scary sometimes, but. That live stream and the producer letter that came out, and then the further producer letters that have already been mentioned are going to exist, I hope will kind of help ease people's concerns about that, kind of let people know like this is what the plans are, and so it's not like a sudden you log in one day and the game's different.
Yeah,
that would be that would be wild. That happened to me with D4DJ, which I used to play. I logged in one day and the UI was completely different. And in my opinion, worse and harder to find things. And that actually really contributed to me dropping that game because I couldn't find where things were anymore.
And that's what I also I kind of low key fear with Bandori as well. Like one thing about D4DJ that I think at some point did detract people is that there's a little bit of a new content overload where there's just so much new things all at once coming up that it kind of becomes so overwhelming that people just kind of tune it all out. And that's what I am also kind of fearing with Bandori, with all the new changes that's coming up. But I think one thing that will strengthen that possibility is, again, we've been growing up with these girls for almost 6 years now, right? The fact that they're actually going to develop and change, that's something I think a lot of people will still tune in and really try to learn more about, learning about their new lives and, a year later from their start of the game. So it's going to be really cool.
I think so too. I think that continuity for old fans of like, oh, we get to see, like, for example, Chisado and Kanon are moving in together. Like, that's such a cool little development that you would never have gotten a year ago. And so now, if you've been following the game for a long time, you get to see these two characters enter this brand new situation and kind of think like what potential events or interactions can come from this. Or you have like Kaoru doing a week abroad. Like, will that be referenced in the future? Like, is that going to be big for her character? All those little things that, for me as a player, I'm not an OG player, but I've been around for a while at this point. For me, those are very enticing to keep following the game and the story.
Definitely. Rachel, you mentioned quite a few interesting tidbits there, when it comes to some of these third years. So I think for a lot of people, they're not really necessarily too sure, right? For let's say they haven't really followed the Japanese story, don't really understand the language, right? They don't maybe necessarily know exactly what these third years are going to go into. So maybe for those, could you maybe share a few highlights from what you know or from what you call some really interesting tidbits that maybe some of the third years our favorite third years will kind of go into?
Our favorite third years, aka all 10 of them.
Yeah.
They're all so good. I did a thread on Twitter about a little over a month ago where I kind of went into all of the stuff that we knew so far, and then basically every event that we've gotten since, like, I want to say October. Almost every event has in some way tied to this ongoing storyline about graduation. I think the only exceptions are the Morphonica collab, which was never going to be story related, or like one random RAS event, which was also like they're so separate from the third years as a group that's not surprising. And then like the Roselia tour story, which I kind of wish mentioned graduation, but like that's kind of its own separate storyline at this point. Every single other story has either been directly about graduation or like referenced graduation. But for like specific information, there are 2 colleges that have been established as being close to their region. We don't know a whole lot about them yet, but we do know that the 10 third years are going to be split across them in some way. I'm expecting it to be like a 5-5 split, kind of like they are now in high school. And so what we know so far, we know that Chisato has been accepted into one specific school. We know that Kanan has been accepted into the other school. So they, instead of being classmates now, are going to different schools.
Oh, no.
But as we learn in the latest Hello Happy event and in the Kanan card story that's related to that, they're going to get an apartment together. So they're going to be together, even if they're not at the same school. That's such a nice little moment.
Yeah.
So those 2 have been accepted. We know exactly what school they're going to. Yukina has also been accepted, but we know literally nothing about that other than that it happened.
Maybe she doesn't know either.
So funny. Probably, honestly. I bet Lisa did all her stuff for her. Because Yukina sending in her application was mentioned way back in like the Australia event, which was like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we heard absolutely nothing for months. Like when Chisato sent in her application, literally the event after she got in. And so part of me was like, did Yukina just like not get into college? Like, is that what we're going with? But then the New Year's event, even though Yukina like does not appear in the New Year's event, there's just like a line of dialogue from I think Hina, who's like, did Yukina tell you she got into college? And that's it. It does not get elaborated on. I think that's so funny. So she still has to graduate high school, which good luck. Hopefully Lisa helps her.
Yeah, hopefully Lisa can help her out there.
So those 3 characters are all already admitted into college. The way Japanese college admissions work, there's kind of 2 paths you can take. And with one, you don't have to really do an entrance exam. It's more like you just send in an application and they decide that they like you and they admit you, which is what those 3 characters all did. But the other 7 are all doing entrance exams, which take place in January in Japan. So it's entirely possible that the next event will be about entrance exams, like directly. So that's really cool. But then even among those characters, we've learned like little tidbits about what's happening. We know that Aya is planning on applying to the same school that Chisato got into. She's been taking like extra lessons, like practice tests. She's actually doing really well on her practice tests too. We know that Kaoru is presumably going to study theater. And knowing what we know about the colleges, that'll probably place her also at the same school as Chisato, so they could be classmates very well. Which I think is like they've been at separate schools but have had this ongoing plot line since the beginning. And so putting them together is just like really interesting to me because you'll get to see more of them together, presumably. Especially if Chisato majored in theater. The Christmas Chisato Kaoru event is partially about her being kind of not sure what she wants to study. She's torn between literature and theater, and the event never does resolve which one she applies for. It's kind of implied that she went for theater, but I don't believe it was ever outright stated. So she and Kaoru could be classmates. And then what else? Hina and Maya are both applying with their first choice being the school that Kanan got into. So that would kind of give us, if this is all correct, we'd be getting Chisato, Kaoru, and Aya in one school, and then Kanon, Maya, and Hina in a different school. And then the four Roselias we know literally nothing about, which I think is hilarious. They're totally getting an event soon.
Okay.
That's going to be about this. I am fully expecting Yuki Lisa to get split up in some way.
Oh,
I
no!
know that's a controversial take, but I am fully expecting it to happen.
Oh no!
I'm also kind of expecting like Sayu and Hina to end up together in some way, because they've been in separate schools. Also,
yeah,
it just feels like if they're gonna mix up the groups, that putting them together like probably will happen, and then we'll get like an event about them like being in the same class together or something.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Bushiro will be listening right now, and they already be like, "Oh, we're already on it."
Change all their plans because I've figured them out. I know everything. I don't know. I guess the one other standout that's happened to me is Lisa's whole character during this arc. The graduation stuff has really started around the Australia event, and Campus Beat, which is a Poppy Put event, is also about graduation and moving on.
Oh. Yeah. Your mic kind of died a little bit there.
No, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, so Australia event and Campus Beat were kind of the official start of this whole graduation series of events. But even back in the Afterglow Roselia summer event, you had hints of Lisa being all melancholy and having this anxiety about what's going to happen. And that follows through in Australia. Australia event is all about her being anxious for the future and about graduation and about change. And you have Hina kind of there being like, well, change isn't scary. Change is something to look forward to. And those two bounce off of each other for the whole event with these two very different perspectives on graduation and the future. I think it's such a good event. I really hope people read it when it comes out officially, or that they read the fan translation that I did. I really, really do enjoy it.
Yeah.
The whole Lisa thing with her being the most melancholy and almost most sad about graduation and leaving high school. That's such a good character bit for her because it makes so much sense. She's always been a little anxious about what's going on in Roselia, about Yukina, about the band. And so now she has this big life-changing event that she gets to also be anxious about.
Yeah. So definitely for those listening, please definitely check out all the works that we have with the event translations. I'm sure to you, Rachael, events translation is definitely a nice, more chill project to do. Definitely less content to work with, but regardless, it's still like, a project of its own.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to have really listening comprehension to do an event translation.
Yeah.
Although it does help to hear the lines and hear the tone they're spoken in. That can help you kind of figure out how to word something in English. But even like the basic events that I've been doing, you still have 7 chapters of a main story. And then you have the card stories, which I prefer. I like to do the card stories. Not everyone does, but I think they add another perspective on the events. So ultimately, that's like actually a lot of text, and you have to make it make sense, which isn't always easy.
For sure.
Sometimes like one character like Hina or Kaoru or Akko or like any other like difficult character will say something and I'll have no idea what they mean.
I can imagine those three in particular. Yeah, they would have some interesting jargon for sure. So.
When they put Kaoru and Hina together in the Australia event, I'm like, no, you can't do this to me.
Aliens talking to each other. It was a really fun
translation experience. I really like how I got Kaoru to come across. Like, they give her such a specific way of speaking in the official English translation, and I kind of wanted to like match that. And I think I did so. I think it kind of got the humor of her character across, but also that's not all she is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, regardless, Rachael, whatever all the things you've talked about today with these third years and all their tidbits just makes me even more excited for what's to come in terms of content in March with the lore and such. So I definitely look forward to seeing how the third years continue to grow, and of course as everyone ages up in March, we'll definitely see how more story develops with all of them, and of course I'm sure you and everyone else in the community, the translating sort of side of things, will continue to work hard, and we'll definitely support you all in continuing these translations and learning more about our favorite characters, starting from the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, the support it means a lot. Like I've said before, we already know there's going to be 2 events for graduation. I'm already planning on translating them. I don't know if I'll be able to do it by myself. I've reached out to some people to see if they'd be willing to make it a collaboration. I don't know how that will work, but I'm really excited about what's going on in the 6th anniversary.
Especially when like the school excursion event was already sort of like the preview of all previews. Like you have all the third years coming together and hanging out.
School excursion is so good. One of my favorite events this year for sure.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's coming in like 3 events from now in ENdori, and I'm planning on tiering it, so I gotta do it for these third years. So we'll see how it goes there. Thank you. Yeah, so this all just makes me all the more excited for them. So we'll see definitely how they continue to develop, and of course we look forward to any of your future projects that you will do. And I guess just to sort of wrap up pretty soon, other than like the graduation events, are there any other future projects that you plan to do for translating?
I have a couple that are still in the works, so they're not really a future project. I'm already working on them. Day 2 of the Roush Craziness subs are actually in progress right now. I released day 1 a year ago on the anniversary of the game, so like 5th anniversary. And now it's coming up to 6th anniversary, and day 2 still isn't out. So I've been kind of grinding out the little bit of work that's still left on that. I hope to get that out soon. I might get it out on the anniversary. I think that would be fun. So that's happening. Also, day 2 of Edelstein, the Roselia Solo Live. That's a future project that Fina and I are both working on together. No ETA on that yet, but I'm very excited to get another 2-day concert out, especially one that I enjoy as much as that. I don't think I've mentioned this before outside of my Discord server, but I'm also working on the Roselia fan meetings from 2018. So some more ancient content. Everyone knows I love ancient content. I really want to get those out. Especially because of Take-san's departure from the franchise. I think she absolutely deserves that, to have that subbed and accessible. So that's a lot of work. I have about 30 minutes of day 1 translated and like already, but it's like a 2-part event with a lot of people talking over each other, and then a lot of like crying at the end where people are also talking. So I know that's gonna be really hard, and I'll probably cry too.
Oh yeah.
In terms of subbing, that's what I'm doing. I'm always planning on doing whatever Roselia song lyrics come out. So when Dear Gleam and whatever other song end up on this new single drop, I'll do those just as I have been. Yeah, I think that's all I have going on right now. Planning on doing the graduation events, planning on finishing up these subs, finishing up more lyrics, and just seeing what else comes out.
All right. Well, of course, cheers to a great year of 2023 ahead for you and your translating projects. I wish you all the best and good luck on that. We'll definitely look forward to hearing back from you when those projects are done, and we'll certainly once again appreciate all the work and time you've put on these projects.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to talk about them. Like I could talk about this for hours for sure.
Well, sadly, we are out of time in terms of our time in the RePHIL studio. But Rachael, it was a great pleasure speaking with you today to learn a lot more about you and your works, and just how much commitment you have and dedication you have, and it's something that I do truly appreciate, as well as I'm sure many listeners out there right now. Again, truly appreciate the work that all of you've done in translating, as well as for everyone else in the translating community. So just before I end off, Rachael, any last words, any last shout outs that you want to give to anyone at this time?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to just anyone who supported me. Even if you just like a post that I post on Twitter, I do see that, and that does encourage me to keep putting out content. Huge shout out to everyone in the Rosenland Discord server. Link is pinned in my Twitter. They're just such a good group of people. They're willing to listen to me complain about concerts endlessly. Very, very welcoming community. If anyone wants to join, always open to others. Also, just let me drop a huge recommendation to the live events that are happening in Bandori. I know a lot of people only play the game or watch the anime, but the live side is so good. And if you haven't checked out a concert, I highly recommend like looking up your favorite of the live bands and picking one. Even if it's not subbed, just pick out like a new one. Or like with Roselia, you have a lot of options for subbed ones. You can pick out like, oh, I like Firebird. I'll pick the one that introduced Firebird. I really do encourage people to give all sides of the franchise a shot.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Rachael, again, thank you again for your great words and your last final shout outs to everyone. Of course, your Twitter will also be linked in the description of this video below here. So again, please check her out if you want to learn more about the sub projects, and of course, feel free to show your support. So yeah, I think we will end off here today. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the RePHIL Studio. The set has been complete. Get your cans ready because we will refill on the next available set for our next guest. But until then, be sure to check out this podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And of course, also join the Anga Academy Discord server if you want to contribute to the studio questions and of course be able to interact with special guests in the server. And again, links in the descriptions below. So thank you all so much for listening. We will see you all next time. So until then, take care. Bye now.